Chairwoman, you are now live.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Chair Katie Cornell, and I'd like to welcome you to the May 27th, 2021 Public Art and Cultural Commission meeting. The Public Art and Cultural Commission, originally called the Public Art Board, was established by the Asheville City Council in 2000. This 9-member commission serves as an advisory board to the city on matters concerning public art or art in public spaces. The commission is responsible for promoting public art in the city, overseeing the city's public art projects, and ensuring the art displays in public buildings and public spaces in the city of Asheville are properly maintained. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city's website and also linked on the committee page. We also have an option for public to listen live by phone by calling 855-925-2801 and entering 9385 as the meeting code. For those of you out there today, welcome. Roll call, we'll start with that. I'll now go through and introduce the committee members who are participating virtually. Please make sure to mute your microphone if you're not speaking. When you have a question or would like to speak, unmute your microphone. Committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Shirley Whitesides. Shirley? I'll come back to Shirley. Allie McGee.
Hello.
Andrew Fletcher.
Good afternoon.
Pete Perez cannot be with us today. Joanna Haggerty.
Hi there.
Constance Richards.
Hello.
Jasmine Washington.
Here.
And Marcia Almodovar.
Hello.
Shirley, are you with us? Okay, I know Shirley's on the call, but maybe her microphone's not working. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud and do a vocal roll call vote for each item. Additionally, I'll ask committee members to raise their hand to speak, and I will call upon them. We will now move to the administrative items. Our first administrative items is to consider approving the minutes from our April 2021 meeting. Did everyone have a chance to review the minutes? Are there any edits or discussion? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Constance has motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Andrew has seconded. The motion has been moved and seconded. I will now conduct a roll call vote. Committee members, when I say your name, please say aye or nay. Shirley Whitesides. Shirley, if your mic's not, you're good. Yay, thanks. Allie McGee.
Aye.
Andrew Fletcher.
Aye.
Joanna Haggerty.
Aye.
Constance Richards.
Aye.
Jasmine Washington.
Aye.
Marcia Almodovar.
Aye.
And I, Katie Cornell, vote aye as well. Okay, reminder to members on terms and appointments. Just a reminder, we have some terms that are expiring in June. Constance Richards, Joanna Haggerty, and Allie McGee all have expiring terms. Only Constance is not eligible for reappointment. So we will have an opening starting in June. And City Council will be voting to reappoint Joanna and Allie, hopefully. So now we're going to move to public comment. In addition to pre-recorded and or emailed comments, we will also be taking live public comments for up to an hour. Each speaker will have 3 minutes for public comment. PAC did not receive any pre-recorded or emailed comments. Callers, if you are on the line and wish to provide live comment, please enter the speaker queue now by pushing *3. The call-in number again is 855-925-2801, and the meeting code is 9385. Callers, you will hear an automated message letting you know when you are unmuted and live in the meeting. You may begin speaking after the automated message. If you accidentally drop out of the queue, you can just redial the number and meeting code, press *3 to rejoin the speaker queue and be reconnected. Staff will now connect live callers from our speaker queue for informal discussion and public comment. Staff, do we have any callers on the line?
Chair, we have no callers in the queue at this time.
All right. We will check again later in the meeting. All right. So now we're going to move on to new business and Rad Tip Public Art. Last week, we had a work session in the River Arts District to discuss Rad Tip projects. Staff, would you like to give a bit of a recap over what we did last week before we begin discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say that the group who was able to meet was Todd Oklachaney, who's the Planning and Urban Design Director. Councilwoman Shanika Smith was able to attend. Lucas Young from Community and Economic Development, and myself as staff from Planning and Urban Design were also there. And then from this group, we had Katie Cornell, Jasmine Washington, Allie McGee, Pete Perez, and Andrew Fletcher in attendance. So it was not an official meeting. I want folks to know that it was a walking work session that was advertised in accordance with public meeting laws in advance. We met at 8 River Arts Place, which is the city's building that's currently being considered to be leased for strategic purposes. Right across from the new gear sign in the River Arts District. The Wilma Dykeman 101st birthday anniversary party was just wrapping up. So we got to connect with some friends and partners, and we walked from that location up the new Wilma Dykeman Greenway to the Smoky Park Captain Bowen Bridge, talking about the locations and sites and projects as we went. When we got up to the bridge, we did stop and have a more prolonged conversation about the types of partners that folks might want to see in future public art projects. And specifically, we talked talked intensely, I would say, about prioritizing existing community projects and organizations as we move forward with different pieces of public art. So our job is to leverage and amplify the voices that are already out there and doing things. And so there are some notes that are attached to the agenda of this meeting that include just a small brainstorm that the group was able to come up with of different partners that we could look to meeting up with in the future. We also discussed what type of call for artists might be most conducive to the outcomes that this group is looking for. I think that's worth talking about in a larger discussion with this group if you guys want to do that today. I'm happy to clarify what those types of calls for artists are, the pros and cons of each of those. And that's, so I'd say that we might, for discussion purposes, would it be helpful if I started with calls for artists and and the group can talk about their thoughts?
Yeah, could you speak a little bit about the 3 projects that will be next?
Okay. So we looked at a variety of projects that we want to do in the River Arts District, but the ones that we have prioritized are 2 mural projects and then a musical sound art project. And that was based on the input and nods from the Public Art and Cultural Commission in December of last year. So mural project number 1 is on the stanchions or pylons underneath the Captain Bowen Bridge there, Smoky Park Bridge, most people still call it. And there are really 2 different murals that are possible in this location. One, the content would be about the ecology of the area. So the deep ecology, both from land and a river and riparian perspective. That would be on the west side of the road, on the east side of the road. If we are able to do a mural in that area, we were hoping that it is more of a neighborhood-based mural embedded into the values and history of Hillcrest. That would require some partnership and working with folks that currently aren't at this table. And the third mural is the West Asheville Riverlink Bridge, which the underneath part of it is connected to Gene Webb Park and the 13 Bones Bridge, where Cleesta Cotton's piece from Soul Singing is attached. And that area would be a very large mural that would span across both sides of the street, that would focus on the history and that of the area. So we're not going to say the history of the River Arts District necessarily, because it makes people think that we're talking about how the River Arts District came to be. And what really we're talking about is the longer term history of the area, say from, when indigenous people were settled here or using it for trading and transportation until now. So those are the three projects that we were mostly looking at. Oh, musical art. I didn't do that. Musical and sound art is a very loosely defined project for the area where the swings are up by the northernmost wetland. And when we sat there, we listened to all of the ambient noise that was happening. It's a very, very busy intersection with lots of cars. And then above you, you have a constant percussive, it's not regular, but it's a little bit of a regular, a beat happening from the clank of all the seams in the bridge up above. So we had some discussions about what partners we could be looking for, which could include the community partners that were aforementioned as well.
Can you share a little bit about the timeline you're thinking for these three projects?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll share the timeline, but I'll share a comment first. I think that the group really had an aha moment when we realized how difficult it is going to get to some of these projects together. So what you should know is that in order to work with NCDOT and get a project up on any of those bridges, the bridge that's at the West Asheville Riverlink site and that timeline project, that is going to be easier for us because although it's an NCDOT bridge, it is not linked to being a federal highway. And so the amount of review that we have to go through is a little bit lesser in that location, but it is a several months long review period. And we cannot get an approval to do this work until we know the content of the work. So it is going to require us to hold an RFQ or RFP process to work with an artist and the community on the content and come up with a fairly well-defined concept, and then to go into review with NCDOT for several months. So we are talking about that if we were able to start this project this summer, it is very likely that we would not be able to actually install this project until spring of next year. Okay. And then for musical and sound art, I think it's slightly more of a typical process. However, we have to remember that, again, this project is unique in that it is sitting in the floodplain. And so it will require certain permits through the city that aren't required in certain other areas. And that just means that it would add about 30 days onto a normal kind of process. But we did decide that we really should get cooking we didn't decide anything, but I'll say that we decided that we really should get cooking with the timeline project is what I think I walked away hearing, is that mural and being able to engage in an artist and get something going that might be a little bit of a lower hanging fruit would be important. And then we could parallel process the musical piece at the same time. Sidebar. It is possible for us to go ahead and get our artists under contract or underway and not be working with them at the same time. We could go ahead and release those RFQs and RFPs and take advantage of the excitement of having more than one happen at the same time, but also make clear that, for instance, that we weren't going to work on the musical piece until December, something like that.
Do any of the PAC members that were at the work session want to add anything else about our discussion? Does anybody have any questions? Does that bring to mind any questions?
I think I wanted to just say that I love the walking tour, first of all, and I think it did really hit home for me, like the scope of the projects. And we were talking about sort of like local artists versus, having a broader call. And I think I personally came down on the side of having the broader call, so we wouldn't just pick from the same like very small pool of local artists who might be able to pull this off. But one of the components, at least for the really big murals, for me that would be important would be having like a training element for local artists, and having that be a really important piece of it. So that's all I wanted to add, because I kind of flip-flopped on that one, because I was like, oh yeah, we don't want the same 5 muralists to be in the running for this, or whatever. But yeah.
Andrew has his hand raised.
Yeah, Allie, I agree with that. I think that I know that working with the city is a little bit different than working with a lot of the other clients. And part of the reason I think that the first approach wouldn't work as well is because we don't have the bench of artists in the area that are working with the city. But a way to build that bench is, I think, what you just said. There may be in the time in the future we say, hey, actually, we have a lot of people who are used to being vendors for the city and are used to this process, but this is a good way to help build that bench. So I support that, Allie.
Awesome. Marcia had her hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention with the timeline project, I think collaborating with the Eastern Band of Cherokee for that beginning piece that you mentioned would be a good idea for historical accuracy. And if you're depicting any kind of mural that represents the land in that way, it would be important to have them kind of be on the advisory team, Richard Sneed and his team there.
Great.
Good suggestion. Anybody else? Steph, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm going to give kudos to this group for a lot of different comments and input. People aren't standing up and saying things, but one of the things that came out was a discussion about programming and how we don't just want to put projects up. We want them to have a life and serve a purpose in the community. And this group came up with a lot of different ideas. So, for example, one of them was, well, if we do this ecology mural up here by the wetland, we can make sure that like there's a guide for high school students so they can interpret the mural and also maybe do water quality testing at the river, learn about riparian species, and identify different projects that can happen at the wetland. And those types of things are just fantastic. So thumbs up to all of you for coming up with those fantastic ideas. And I think what Allie said was really important, and I'd like to just follow that up for people to understand, because we didn't talk about it here, is that the call for artists in Asheville, we really don't focus on having invitational or competitions. We usually have a request for qualifications, and more often we have a request for proposals process. And the pros of the request for proposals process, generally in most folks' mind, is that you get to see what people's approach is going to be, and the evaluators are thinking, I like this idea better than I like that idea. That process means that you originally have to have a large pool of applicants in which to invite several people to submit proposals based on their qualifications. So it takes a little bit more time. It takes a lot more time. It takes about 2 more months, because you are asking those people then to submit concept proposals, you're paying them an honorarium, and then you're having a second review process and picking the person that you want to work with. The request for qualifications process really allows you to streamline a lot of that. So that's the pro on that one. You won't know what that person is going to come up with, but the idea is that if you can find someone who really is a public artist that understands how to engage with community well, you trust that they're going to come up with a kind of content that is going to reflect the stories and the culture that the community want to see, or the aesthetics or design pieces that the community wants to see in there. So that is something that we don't have to decide on today. I'm not asking you guys to decide on that, but I think it is moving forward that we should try as a group to refine when we're using which type of process based on the type of project and the goals of the process itself, if that makes sense. Okay.
When do you expect these calls to go out?
Well, I'll need to work with the RadTip Public Art Committee to review the calls and get some input on that. And I'd like to do that in the next month. So I know that it won't be until we meet again at minimum.
Perfect.
Okay.
And that's a great segue to our next section, which we've added to the agenda, is to talk about subcommittees. So losing Constance, she actually sits on 2 subcommittees. So we will need to replace her on both of those. Also, Jay had already rolled off the Urban Trail Committee when his term ended. So currently, as of June, I will be the only PAC member on the Urban Trail Committee. Also, Valeria was on the RadTip committee, as well as Andrew and Constance. And with Constance rolling off, Andrew will be the only PAC member on the RadTip Public Art subcommittee. So we need 2 members, hopefully, to roll onto both of those committees. So if you are interested, please let Steph know, or whoever is the chair by the end of the meeting know that you would like to be on one of those subcommittees. Okay? All right. Any questions about that?
Chair, if I just might clarify for the people who might be watching that while Jay Fields and Constance rolled off the Public Art and Cultural Commission, they are our diehard public art supporters, and we expect that they probably will stay with one or more of those committees. I know Jay stayed on with the Urban Trail Committee, and Constance, we would love for you to stay on. Thank you very much as an at-large member of those subcommittees of the commission. Thank you.
Yes, of course. We just try to keep 3 PAC members on each of our subcommittees, current PAC members. So the next piece is the annual election, and I'm just going to hand it over to you, Steph.
Thank you very much, Chair. So my first report is on nominations. We have 3 nominations for the vice chair position, Marcia Almodovar, Pete Perez, and Andrew Fletcher. We have 2 nominations for the chair position. That would be Katie and Andrew. So my first role or job here is to ask if there are any additional nominations that folks want to make today. Give me just a second. Okay, seeing no hands or any additional nominations, I'm going to move along then and say that there is an opportunity to have discussion on these nominations. Is there any discussion that the group would like to have on these nominees or the nomination process? Was that yes, Andrew? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Steph. Thanks. I'm flattered to be nominated for both positions. Obviously, I'm only going to be able to vote for myself for one of them, I feel. And so I just to let you guys know what I'm going to be doing is I will be supporting myself for vice chair. So I'm flattered to be nominated for chair. But if you would join me in voting for me for vice chair, I think I would probably be more comfortable with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Anyone else have any comments, discussion on this item? Okay, I am going to start with a roll call vote. This is an open roll call vote for for vice chair. And so I'm just going to go, what you're going to do is you're going to unmute yourself and you're going to tell me who you're voting for. Okay. So I am going to start with Katie Cornell. For the vice chair position, who are you voting for?
Andrew Fletcher.
Okay. Joanna Haggerty.
I will also be voting for Andrew Fletcher.
Constance Richards.
I'm so sorry. I was trying to ask also who again is for chair? Who are the nominations for chair?
That would be Katie.
Oh, and Katie can continue, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so sorry about that. And for vice chair, also Andrew is my vote.
Andrew.
Myself, Andrew Fletcher.
Jasmine, who do you vote for vice chair?
Andrew.
Shirley Whitesides, who would you like to vote for?
Andrew.
Marcia, would you like
Andrew.
And Allie.
I guess I'll say Andrew.
Oh, no.
I mean it. It's fine.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll now announce the results by a unanimous vote. Andrew Fletcher is the vice chair of the Public Art and Cultural Commission for the next year. Moving on to the position of a chair. We have one nominee, as the other nominee has withdrawn his own nomination, and that is Katie Cornell. And I'm going to go around and ask people who they're going to vote for again. We're going to do a roll call vote. I appreciate you going through this. Katie Cornell.
I'll vote for Katie Cornell.
Okay. Joanna Haggerty.
Katie Cornell.
Constance Richards.
Also Katie Cornell.
Andrew Fletcher.
Katie Cornell.
Jasmine Washington.
I'm sorry, just to double check. What were the other options?
It's right now your options are Katie Cornell. You can always, this is a regular Democratic vote. You can vote for anyone, although the nominations have been closed.
Oh, okay, I just want to be sure. Katie Cornell.
Thank you. Shirley Whitesides.
Katie Cornell.
Marcia.
Katie Cornell.
And Allie.
Katie Cornell.
Okay, by unanimous vote, we have Katie Cornell acting as chair for the next calendar year. And just a reminder, these positions go into effect at your next meeting. So I will be putting together a meeting with Katie and Andrew to discuss roles and just have a little bit. It's more of an introduction, obviously, for you, Andrew. And I know you're very familiar with these types of things, but I appreciate your willingness to participate in our continued administrative uplift of the commission. Excellent. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks all. So just a reminder, if you would like to be on the Urban Trail Committee or the RADTIP Public Art Committee, you can let me know. Shirley has a question. Yes.
I'm interested in the urban trail. If you
Oh, wonderful.
Okay.
Wonderful.
And I'm interested in RADTIP.
Me too, with RADTIP.
Joanna and Allie. Was that Allie? Yeah. Okay. It's not all full yet. If you want to be on one of those committees, let me know. Jasmine and Marcia. Okay, so next we're going to move on to updates. Steph, you have lots of updates for us.
Yes. Okay. So the first thing is I do want to talk a little bit about the Urban Trail Committee. There is going to be a celebration of the reinstallation of shopping days and the plaque associated with shopping days and the new plaque honoring the Jewish community in Asheville on Tuesday, June 29th at 10:30 a.m. Did everyone receive an invite from this group? Well, then I'm really talking to the general public, it is open to the public, and it'll be a small celebration. We will walk a couple stations. We're also talking about the reestablishment of the cat. Constance is going to speak, and we're going to talk about the reinstallation of Grove's Vision marker out there on Battery Park and Page. So just so you know that that's happening. And as I'll kind of skip ahead, public to public art maintenance, and just say that at your next meeting, we're going to do a recap of what has been accomplished in the last year or so with public art maintenance and what is left to be done. And a little bit explain, Andrew, you were so wonderful at our work session saying, like, oh, I didn't know that you did the public art maintenance. And what it meant to me was I really should help explain to the commission how public art maintenance works right now, and that way you guys can have a better understanding of when we do projects, how they're going to be maintained. So thank you for that. But at your next meeting, I will be having some of that information. And as Katie has mentioned kind of many times, the majority of our public art collection really revolves around those 30 urban trail markers and their plaques. They're really mini monuments, pieces of art. And so the majority of our public art maintenance is maintenance of the urban trail, just so you understand that piece of it.
And
I wanted to let you, yes.
Steph, if I could add to that, and if it was incorrect of me to ask you for more support, then I am asking for more support for you. So that is I'm gonna put a finer point on my comments, and I'm going to appeal for more support for you, so that you can get more done with us. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
And is now the time for us to be making a budget request for more maintenance funding?
The budget is actually already, being presented to City Council, and they're having their public hearing, I believe, next week or the week after. I'm sorry that it's slipping my mind right now. So no. What I would say, it is a good time for you to learn about what the budget for that is right now, and to prepare for the upcoming budget cycle for the city, and also for us to consider some alternative revenue options, including grants and partnerships that might be able to stretch the resources that the city actually has. Does that sound right? Thank you.
I'd like to add to that Steph, as a staff member, is not going to tell us to lobby our favorite council persons, but this is a wonderful time to do that exactly right now. So if you want to make sure that there is art money in the budget, this is a great time to call or talk to our liaison Shanika, and any other council persons, because they are the ultimate decision makers on that money from recommendations that come from staff. But they are the ultimate decision makers, and if they got the keys, and let's ask them to drive us to some better public art and more money for it.
Thank you, Andrew.
Is it possible to ask some tips on how to do that from Steph, or anybody who can share some of the best advice to go about that? I would be happy to do that if someone wanted to support what that should look like.
Well, my best advice is to start a few years ago. But it's, of course, an email to Shanika, I think, would be a great idea. And to, really helps to pay attention to those council meetings and learn about who is our most likely allies, and ask them, give them an ask, and give them something concrete that we can ask for.
So, as you know, we have a program called Place Partners, which is a pathway for community organizations and neighborhoods to put up generally temporary works of art that they're willing to design and pay for and maintain on their own to enliven public spaces. And we received a request this past week from Friends of Hominy Creek Greenway. They are planning on having a 1 week long public art show on Hominy Creek Greenway this fall, probably the first week in October. We've met with them, and I just wanted to let you know that application's been received. We generally And with place partners, our main role is to make sure that the content is appropriate and that any permitting that needs to happen with the city can happen. We try to stay out of the way as much as possible. But for the artists that may be listening, and for those of you that do outreach, know that they are starting their call for artists process now. We'll be working with them later when they get their proposals to take a look at that. And I will be asking a couple members from this group to help make sure that the content that they're proposing aligns with the public's mission for public art. The last update I have for you is about the Vance Monument removal and the PAC visioning process. This is a small update, and it's really just to acknowledge that the Vance Monument is coming down. And if you don't know that, I don't know where you've been. We expect that we'll be able to receive the time capsule this weekend. We'll be at that level, which is the lower level of the monument. And myself and members of our historic resources team at the City of Asheville will be talking to a variety of stakeholders, legit stakeholders like the Western Regional Archives and the Buncombe County Special Collections Room, about the appropriateness of where that time capsule goes and whether or not it's displayed. For everyone's benefit, there is already a copy, a duplicate of all of the contents of the time capsule that is archived with the Western Regional Archives. So we do already know what's in it, and we do already have copies of it. So it's not as if it's going to get lost. So I wanted you to know that because that's been a big question in the media lately. As a reminder that when that area is clear, there'll be a second process where there will be an interim installation of landscaping in the area where the monument used to be. And then this summer, there will be a community engagement process, and it'll look a lot like a public art process, meaning that we're going to, ask the community what types of public art engagement-like activities they would like to have in and around that area to bring forth their culture and their stories and what this place means to them. So it'll be a little bit more alternative as far as an engagement process for our community. It should look like something super fun. You guys will have a role in it. We don't know what that looks like yet, but it's more important to kind of give you the timeline that we are planning right now, or we are talking right now one-on-one with a few stakeholders about what are requests for qualifications for some consultants to help the community look at a future design for this area, what that needs to have in it, those qualifications. And then we're doing some focus groups, the same thing. So we were looking at sometime in the next 30 60 days, releasing a request for qualifications and engaging with consultants within the next two to 3 months, and then engaging directly with community over the end of the summer. So, and that's what I have for you.
Does the group have any questions about those updates? Seeing none, I want to check back in with David. David, do we have any public comment on the line now?
Chair, we do not.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion, announcements, or potential agenda items for our next meeting group?
May I ask the question? Could you explain the role of what is the red tip public art
Subcommittee?
Yes, could you explain what that's all about?
So they're a diverse group of different community members that have been put together. Some representatives from the River Arts District, planners, 3 members from our committee, and what they're doing is overseeing the different calls for artists. Does that kind of cover it, Steph? Would you add anything?
That's it. I think there'll be generally, and this might be something to connect to it, for every public art project that the city does, there's always a committee that includes 3 members of the Public Art and Cultural Commission to help advise the artist selection, the call for artists in the artist selection process. And make sure, and to just expand on that a little bit, you know, really ensure that the community's vision is carried through.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, seeing no further discussion, I will now adjourn the meeting unless there's any objections. So adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.